So, welcome to Lankan Tutor, guys. We're going to be doing the Introduction to Biology Unit 1. If you're not watching this at lankantutor.com, we suggest that you do, because there are going to be some written tutorials in there that you can read through while listening to this. Don't worry, everything is completely free, so go ahead and use them. You are free to copy them and download them as long as you don't redistribute them for money. To be able to truly understand anything in biology, you need to be able to define it. So, say you started studying biology and a friend of yours asks what biology is. What are you going to tell them? The thing is, you need to be able to define everything. If you can define everything, you can pretty much get an A. So, what exactly is biology? It's not so hard. It's not a long definition. It's the study of life and living organisms. Now, even though that's simple, the problem here is you're going to have to explain the parts of the definition which you just explained. What exactly is an organism? An organism is a living thing. Now, the stuff I'm writing down, these words, make sure you have the definitions of all of them. If you can remember the definitions of all of them by the end of this video, congratulations, you have done this video completely and you can move on. If not, there's always the replay button, you can start again. Organisms are living things that they may differ in size, shape, form, or distribution. Size, we know that there are living things of various magnitudes, ranging from gigantic redwood trees which are hundreds of meters tall, whales which weigh around 200 tons, and microscopic bacteria smaller than 2 micrometers. They could be of all sorts of shapes, which could be multicellular organisms, unicellular, or they could even be acellular organisms like viruses. They could be living in terrestrial environments, which means their primary habitat is land. Arboreal environments, which mean they generally live on trees like monkeys and squirrels, or aerial, which means generally birds. Now, even though there isn't a universally accepted definition of life, there are a few criteria, or should I say characteristics, of an organism that he has to meet or follow to be considered a quote-unquote living organism. So there are 7 or 8 of them, depending on how you want to say it. We're going to go through each one of them. You need to remember all these meanings, all the definitions of each one of them, and make sure you remember all 8. The first characteristic is order and organization. Now, we've all heard about the cell, right? It's the basic living unit or structural and functional unit of an organism. But we'll go into detail about cells in a different video. For now, what order and organization generally means is that we should be able to classify it in a sort of organized hierarchy. Let me give you an example. Let's start with the cell. But what we need to realize is that before the cell, there are several other things. For example, organelles. Now, organelles are parts of cells which have definite functions, like the mitochondria, the ribosomes, or the nuclei. But what are organelles made up of? They're made up of molecules which are again made out of atoms. Sure, you can break down atoms into subatomic particles, electrons, protons, neutrons, and again into quarks. But you wouldn't have to go that deep in biology, so we'll leave it at molecules. So what do cells make? Instead of going backwards, let's go forward a bit. Cells of the same kind form together to create tissues. Now remember, this is only in multicellular organisms, because unicellular organisms, it's just one cell for the whole thing, like the amoeba. There's not a bunch of them. If there's a bunch of cells together, you just call it a bunch of amoeba. Remember, definition. There are several points in each definition that you need to remember. I will be emphasizing them as much as I can so that you guys will remember it, and it will be in the note in the description below, so make sure to take your time and read it. Write it down if you have to until you remember it. A tissue is a group of physically linked cells which have common origin and they are specialized for a common function, like the muscle tissues which contract to move body parts, or your nervous tissue that helps transfer impulses throughout the body. They're all groups of cells together. Now remember, the points are physically linked cell, common origin, specialized, common function. You need to get those 4 points right. Otherwise, if you give the definition of tissues without those 4, it will be considered wrong. These tissues now combine with various other tissues to create organs. Now, an organ is a group of tissues which perform a specific function or a group of functions, like the lungs, the heart, the kidney, and so on. Remember, we're only scratching the surface, so you don't really have to know in detail about the parts besides the definitions. So when a bunch of organs get together, it forms organ systems, or systems for short, like the cardiovascular system, the muscular system, the reproductive, and the endocrine system. These systems join together to create organisms. An organism is basically, well, you're an organism and I'm an organism. Just to be clear, what we're talking about throughout this whole process is for multicellular organisms. So just remember, just try and memorize this in terms of a human. It would be easier for you, because as soon as you go into, well, acellular organisms, it would be a completely other story. The hierarchy would be different. But the thing is, we're studying the features of life. So as long as they have an order and organization, it doesn't necessarily need to be this specific order, but it just needs to have an order. Now, a group of organisms of the same species interacting with each other in a defined area at a given time is called a population. All 5 of these points are crucial for the definition, so don't drop any of them out. I know this is going to be really boring. What the hell is this guy saying? He's only defining a bunch of words, but really the first unit is basically defining a bunch of words. At least the first part is. The 5 points, they have to be a group of organisms of the same species interacting with each other in a defined area at a given time. Now, I'm going to give you an example. Remember, this example is not factual, it's not researched, it's just random so that you can get an idea of what a population is. And if someone asks you to give an example of a population, you could give this, potentially this, yes. Unless they give a specific scenario. In the year 2012, there were 4,000 tiger sharks in the Atlantic Ocean. So let's break that down. A group of organisms, now it's going to be a group of tiger sharks, specifically 4,000, of the same species. Notice how we only said tiger sharks, which interact with each other. That's a given. You don't have to specifically mention that the tiger sharks are interacting with each other in a defined area. Here the area is Atlantic Ocean. It's a big area, but still, it's an area. And it has to be in a specific time, which would be 2012. Like when you say the population of a country, it also is bound by these 5 principles. Again, the group of organisms, same species, interaction, defined area, given time. So when a group of populations get together, it's called a community. Don't think you can get away with that. There's another definition for this as well. When a group of organisms of different species in a specific area interacting with each other. So it's not as complicated as population, but it is a group of populations. So that would mean different species, considering that each population has its own species and all of them together would be called a community. So the next thing is something that's fairly familiar, at least in biological terms. Next, we have the ecosystem. It's the functional unit of the environment where abiotic and biotic interact. That means all living organisms interact with the non-living environment. Now, you need to remember the functional unit of the environment. That is pretty important. And finally, we have the biosphere. The biosphere is basically the collection of all ecosystems in the world. That's it. It's not so hard. And there you have it. That is order and organization. Now remember, I said that we have 7 more parts to go. We'll go through all of that in this video. That is why it will be rather long, but don't worry, the other parts aren't as long. The next characteristic a living organism should have is called metabolism. Now you may have heard the word, but do you really know what it means? Metabolism is the sum of all chemical reactions in the body. It could be anabolic or catabolic. Now, catabolic means breaking down into smaller parts. Anabolic means synthesizing larger molecules from broken down molecules. Catabolism releases energy and anabolism requires energy. Photosynthesis and glycolysis are some examples for metabolic activities. And remember, there are metabolic activities happening in your body at every given moment. We have to go into major detail about photosynthesis and glycolysis on the next unit, that you really need to understand how each process works. They're a bit complicated, but don't worry about those now. This is just the scratch. Don't worry, the painful stuff in biology is coming later. The third characteristic is growth and development. Every living thing grows in one way or another, be it a linear growth like trees or a completely different curve. There are 3 stages of growth: cell division, cell expansion, and cell differentiation. This is basically cells splitting to form more cells, but we'll learn more about that on the second unit when we start learning about mitosis, meiosis, and the entire cell cycle. So, what exactly is growth? Growth is an irreversible increase in dry mass. That's all you gotta know. It's an irreversible increase in dry mass. Development is a series of changes that an organism goes through from birth to maturity, and those are the 2 definitions of this part that you need to remember: growth and development. So growth and development are 2 consequent processes that happen in the lifespan of an organism. The 4th characteristic is irritability and coordination. What does irritability mean? Well, irritability is the ability to respond to external and internal stimuli. Basically, living things are sensitive to change. Movement of organisms like animals occur due to irritability. All your reflex actions you have, like when you touch something very hot and quickly pull your hand out of the way, that's because you have the ability to respond to heat or change in the external environment. It's not just for humans, plants show irritability as well. For example, plants that rely on photosynthesis move towards the light. That's called phototropism. And there are plants such as mimosa, when you touch them, they instantly curl up. This is called a nastic movement. It also happens in flowers, how they open and close depending on the environment. The next characteristic is adaptation. Now this is the 5th characteristic. Don't worry guys, we're almost there. It's not so far away. Adaptation is the peculiarity of a structure which is physiological or behavioral that promotes the likelihood of an organism's survival and reproduction in a certain environment. Like the camouflage of animals, the hard exoskeletons of insects, and the stomata of various plants. What we have next is reproduction. And it's something that we all know. Reproduction is the process which ensures the continuity of life, of species, through the ability to produce new offsprings. Reproduction could be done in 2 methods. It could be either sexual reproduction or asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction is done by plants, hydra, and animals like planaria through budding and fragmentation and so forth, and sexually by animals who form gametes which unite to form a zygote. But remember, you don't need to go into detail yet. Basically, remember what reproduction is. Don't worry, there's an entire unit based on reproduction and how the hormonal imbalances work and how your entire body functions during reproduction. And the final trait is heredity and evolution. All organisms have genes, which are passed down from generation to another, and they control specific physiological and morphological and behavioral characteristics. Genes are basically protein codes on DNA. These codes are what defines you. The color of your eyes, your hair, your skin, all of these are defined by the way the bases of your DNA are placed. Of course, we'd go into these later, but get a simplistic idea of how it works for now. Evolution is the ability of organisms to change over a period of time by various factors such as physical boundaries. As a result, they change into a whole other different variety of species. This process can take millions of years, or it can take a few. However, ring species show how evolution takes place in a short amount of time through physical boundaries. If you want to know more about ring species, just go ahead and search about the salamanders in America. Go ahead and check that if you want to know about ring species. But again, genetics comes later on, and we'll be only scratching the surface as of now. If you want to learn about Mendelian characteristics and get more into genetics, it's on the 11th lesson, so that's a long way from now. So we've covered the basic characteristics of living organisms. Great that we know these things, but really, why is biology important? I'm going to give 5 little points that you can remember, but you can go into crazy amounts of detail in this, and I'm just going to tell you what they are. You can get an understanding of biological diversity. You can understand the human body and its functions. You can manage natural resources and the environment. You can have sustainable food production, and you can understand and cure diseases. Remember, that is just 5 points. Each of those go into crazy detail, and just remember the names. You should be good to go. So let's do a little quiz, shall we? If you can define all of these words, congratulations, you can move on to 1.2. If not, you can still move on, but I do recommend that you watch the video again. You need to be able to define these words. So, go. 1. Biology. 2. Organisms. 3. Order and organization. 4. Growth. 5. Development. 6. Irritability. 7. Coordination. 8. Heredity. 9. Evolution. 10. Cell. 11. Tissue. 12. Organ. 13. System. 14. Population. And finally, community. If you can define all of these without a flaw, you should be good to go. And we will see you guys in episode 1.2. Now remember, these videos are always going to be free, and we really appreciate your feedback. So if you have anything to say, please do leave a comment below. We will try our best to reply. And if this video helped you, don't forget to like it. We're not asking for your money, but if you can share this video to someone else that you think that this video will help, we would really appreciate that. Don't forget to watch the tutes on the website lankantutor.com/A-level/biology. The link will be in the descriptions below. You can go ahead, just copy paste that, and you can use that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It has everything you need to know in a much better way. For example, if you really need to have some sort of written material, you could get that printed. Well, see you guys next time, and have a great day.